Hello there, I'm Frankie Vertigo, electronic music producer and DJ from Italy, and today I will break down my track Presto, made in collaboration with the mighty Gai Barone, who surely needs no presentation. The track got very good results on Beatport and got some nice supports out there, so we also decided to make this limited edition vinyl, including the extended version, of course, the Gai Barone's ambient version, and a wonderful piano acoustic version that you won't find anywhere else. So if you'd like to support us, I will leave the link in the description below. So let's hear to a short snippet of the track. So the first thing I'd like to mention is that my mastering chain here is just full of tools, basically. All analyzers and spectrum analyzers. This adapter metric AB is just for references. And one important thing is that I like to compose, write, and mix my tracks with a limiter on. The aim here is mainly to turn up the volume, because I gain stage every single sound, but also to simulate some sort of mastering compression and the final feel that the track may have after being mixed and mastered. So basically what I do is just, if I start with the kick drum, for example, I open my limiter, I link the ceiling with the threshold, and I set this up in a way that the kick is not distorting at all, but it just at its maximum available level. And then I turn off the link, turn up the ceiling to 0. In this way, all the things I add later will be just in relation with the kick drum, that usually in dance music is the most prominent and upfront sound, at least in this genre. So let's dive into the chain. For my kicks, I love to use samples. I have a collection of samples I collected during the years. They are like 15 kick samples that I switch between tracks. And then sometimes when I don't find a fitting one with the track I'm working on, I may create one with the kick 2 or kick 3, but usually I use samples. You will see in every channel that this utility with the gain down, because the project wasn't started from me, but from Gai. So I simply gain staged all the sounds, external sounds, just to put them around -12, -15, mainly because I don't want to clip digitally. And also many of the plugins we use nowadays have some sort of sweet spot around -12, -18. So I still prefer to stay in that sweet spot. So as you will see, all my tracks are picking around that number. So let's solo the kick. The chain here is very simple. A cool trick I used here is actually resampling this kick, because I didn't like how the click of the kick was fitting the track. So to avoid to transpose too much from here, and as I felt the low end was quite good instead, I just wanted to change the click of the kick. So I simply resampled it, taking the audio from the original track here, using this normal, as you see, input chain from Ableton. Sorry, and I resampled. From here, the idea was just hearing the click of the kick in context, transposing it until it fit the track, and then I re-added the bottom end, and from here I re-put inside simpler, just with the correct pitch to my ears. So this is a nice one when you don't want to transpose the full kick and you don't have at your disposal tools like Kick2 that make you shape the kick exactly as you want. Continuing with the chain, we have an EQ. Very simple. On bass sounds and kick drums, I usually use linear phase in high or maximum mode. It depends from the track. And I barely use a high pass to cut these kind of sounds, but instead I prefer to use a shelf to smooth out the very bottom end of the sound if needed. This mainly for possible phase issues that may come later. So even if later during composition or mixing, I move this from 20, let's say, to 25, I will not have any phase shifting. In this case, the kick was a bit too clicky, so I just turned down the volume with a nice shelf cut here from more or less 3000 and 500 minus 2 dB, just to make it less clicky. Then I tend to use on my kicks Neutron Transient Shaper. I love how surgical it is, and very simple here, minus 0.2 on the medium frequencies, and again minus 0.2 on the high frequencies, just to make it less clicky again. Then again, I love to use this SSL EQ simulation from Waves. In this case, I didn't touch anything, or yes, just 0.4 here on the low medium, but the idea is just using to put everything in mono and making the kick a bit warmer and giving that preamp feel to it. Then there is Oscillos Megascope, of which we will talk later when speaking about the phase. Let's just move on with the rest of the sounds at the moment. the clap. Very simple, tight and short clap, really proggy. Again, in simpler, a small medium room reverb with a very short decay, not that short actually, almost 1 second, but just 10% wet, and it's perfectly fitting the groove, and also it just turned out the volume when the kick is on. Once again, EQ, big low cut here. Saturn, wonderful saturator from FabFilter. I tend to use this a lot on snares, claps, and also on hi-hats sometimes. And the idea is just giving the claps the presence they need, without turning up the volume actually, but just working on those frequencies, making it a bit more crispy and yeah, just present. In this case, the plugin is very nice because you can just drive the frequencies you want, and also you can shape it as you want. So let's hear with. You can barely hear the difference, but with the heads, you can hear as it's a bit more present as around 1000 Hertz. So I really like to use this plugin. Let's turn them on. Then I use standard clip. The idea here is just making the clap a little bit less dynamic. With the hard clipping, no oversampling. It's just making tiny adjustment. Let's see. Yeah, maybe 1-2 dB. This will help in mixing and mastering, and I do this very carefully, trying to not ruin the sound. Percussions, I tend to put all my percs in one group. Usually my percs are toms, bongos, congas, or other boots percussions, like this one. In this case, these are all samples. The first one is a kind of low mid perc, really grooving together with all the rest. Again, small medium room reverb. These actually are also pitched with the track, so they move a little bit throughout the loop to make them less boring. Again, simple EQ, just removing this useless bottom end in this case. Here I used this mid-side equalization just because I felt that this perc had a weird feeling on the low end, so I prefer to put it in mono. Very simple. and this was mainly to fit the bass line to make them tighter and groovier. Glue compressor, removing a bit of the attack, giving the whole sound a bit more body. Here the congas channel, together with all the rest. The cool thing here was Valhalla Frequency Echo, that is a free plugin from Valhalla. And we automated the wet and dry knob and the delay to make these nice transitional effects. Let's hear from. Very cool. I love this early 2000s minimal sounds, glitchy, and also making the whole arrangement a bit more interesting. As you see, I used this on breakdowns and on all the transitions from one section to the other. And it's simply moving. Moving with the track. Again, delay, reverb. Once again, we have fab filter for EQ, removing the low end, making space for the low perk we heard before. Just tiny adjustment, -2 dB. Let's see if I can see the percussion here, low perk. As you saw, they were hitting the same spot here. So as these congas are secondary in my priorities list, I just turn this -2 dBs down here to make a bit more space for the low perk. And then I gave a little bit of volume back here around 1K to give them a bit more presence and to sculpt them into their exact frequency range. And then once again, compressor. Just to remove those spikes that are mainly coming from the frequency echo. Last percussion channel. Very cool industrial claps, something like that. That makes the whole thing quite groovy. I love them. And they sound really proggy. Once again, just EQ here, making space for the other percussions, low cut. Then all together, they are in this group, percussions group, and the group has another equalizer from Neutron, of which I love its soft saturation button here that makes everything a little crispier and gives more presence. Really nice. I tend to use this quite a lot in percussions and hi-hats, and sometimes on both. Sometimes I just alternate depending on the tracks. here I just low cut even more, and then here making space for the heads, basically. Compressing just a tiny bit the group, maybe half a dB, keeping the attack very short release to groove together with the track and just to glue everything together. Then sidechain compressor, the old Ableton compressor. As you see, there is this upgrade button because I feel they are not exactly the same, and I am used to hear the effect of this one, and I love it, and so I simply don't want to change it because it's working. And simply sidechain compression. For sidechain, I recorded the kick here on a different track. Is exactly this kick after processing, but for sidechain I just use the click of the kick, as you can hear, and then I tended to exaggerate to find the sweet spot of attack and release. In this case is in auto mode, but sometimes I can make this manually. So they are grooving together. Another side chain, this time a little bit different, with the clap for the same exact reasons. So when the clap hits, all the percussions are turning down their volume a little bit. And then track spacer for the heads that we still didn't touch, but let's move on with the heads group and channels. What do we have here? A lo-fi shaker sample. Very nice. Again, just utility, short and small reverb. Fab filter EQ to shape the sound, low cut at 500. And soot to make it less harsh. I felt this shaker was quite harsh, probably because of its lo-fi feel. So I simply used soot to smooth out these frequencies that I was hearing quite resonant to my ears. Once again, another channel. Shakers and tambourines all together. Here you can find a Fab Filter Saturn just to make them a little bit crispier, adding hair and presence. Really nice plugin. I love it. Auto pan to move them around my head and just to make them less boring. And grooving with the track as well. Let's hear. Very fast movement in this case, moving from left to right very quickly, giving them a bit of that cool stereo presence, delay and reverb, and once again sculpting them with a low cut, and then here making space for the other two shakers and heads channels. And once again, suit. Let's solo it. They were quite noisy here. You can hear that almost whistle sound, really harsh. And like this, much better to my ears. Last channel is shakers. Very simple and fast actually, and straight. These are giving the whole composition a very cool driving feel. Let's hear in context. Very nice. And once again, low cut EQ and making space for the others, and a little bit of cut, dynamic cut here around 11K. Probably another resonance I heard. Surely another resonance I heard. What I love to do is to put all my heads and eye percussions into one group. The concept is basically the same as the percussions. I tend to compress them a little bit to glue them together. Sometimes I may keep the attacks, sometimes I may smooth out the attacks a little bit, but in this case I love this feeling they had. Just 1-2 dBs maximum. Again, neutron equalizer, low cut, removing a bit of noisiness here around 1K to make space for all the other sounds, and here adding just 1 dB of air, basically. What I love to do on hi-hats is putting this overdrive plugin, stock plugin from Ableton. Sometimes I use this one, most of the times I use this one, or sometimes I use Saturn again, but as in this case I already used Saturn for the clap and also for these heads and tambourines, I prefer to use the overdrive to give them a different feel and to glue once again everything together, all the hi-hats group. Just 10% in this case, sometimes I just use 5. This gives them a very nice presence in the high end. So without and with. Let's hear the difference in context. It's very cool because it brings all the heads much forward and up front without actually turning up the volume, and also sculpting them in the exact frequency I want them to sound without changing the pitch or the sound itself, just making them a bit crispier, airy. Really lovely technique. Then once again on the group, I have the sidechain from the kick and from the clap. In this case, I do this quite rarely. I clipped the whole heads channel, sorry, the whole heads group. very small adjustment to remove a little bit of those peaks. This mainly is to let the compressor in master, or if you put the compressor into your master channel, to let it breathe a little bit more. And in this way, it's not triggered by those quite useless peaks. If you do this carefully, it's a very nice technique to have more headroom to work later. So here the fun part with the basses. Let's hear what we have. So this is sub-boom bass, basically a sine wave sub. Really simple. I remember I recorded from here, from this channel here, from this plugin. It was a preset, but it had some weird behavior on oscillator reset. So it was shifting the phase during the loop. So basically I just recorded a very short loop here, and I made just this short loop working right, in my opinion, with the track, and mainly with the kick drum. Very cool and groovy. Let's hear it in context. So what do we have here in this chain? Sub bass, saturation from Softtube, cool and free plugin, very nice one, giving the sub a bit more harmonics to make it punch a little bit more through speakers, and mostly small speakers. EQ, again, as I told before, I tend to use linear phase for bass and kick sounds, just to avoid phase issues, mainly phase correlation issues between sounds. Very small adjustment, not very small, but here -15 to remove a bit of that boominess around 20 Hz. And then in this case, for this bass sound, I didn't need all the high end, because then I have also a mid bass and a stub. So I cut it also because it was quite clicky. So to make it a bit cleaner, very cool and grooving. Another EQ here. This sound had this resonance here I didn't like, so I simply smoothed out a little bit. With this dynamic EQ. Pro C, very nice compressor from FabFilter, giving the whole channel a bit more body. And still removing those bad peaks it had and making it a bit more even. And for the same reason, in this case, I also used a limiter. As the sub has a big importance in dance music, I love to give all my basses as much body as I can, making them very tight and compressed, and together with the kick once again. Really nice. So let's also have a look at this oscilloscope, Oscillus Megascope. Very cool plugin that I really love. I learned this technique from a psytrance producer friend of mine. I don't know why, but in psytrance they are quite precise with the bass and kick phase correlation. So basically, as you can see, the goal here was aligning the phase of the bass with the phase of the kick. Since I started using this technique, my low end is much tighter, precise, never losing a note, and sounding really good on big sound systems, on small systems, even on my phone. So I really suggest to get a nice plugin like this one. I bought this one because it's the only one that allow me to play around with latency, because when you use all these external plugins and not stock plugins, you are also adding big latency. In this case, as you can see, 14,750 milliseconds. So basically I put this number here, so the figures I see here are simply aligned together, the kick and the bass. And of course you cannot put everything exactly in phase. For this part here, I'm not worried because then it's sidechained, it's the click of the kick basically. But here it's very nice if you can do the best to make these two sounds be aligned properly. And as I said, of course you cannot do every time perfectly, but ideally you can try it. And mainly if the bass is more than one note and it's not a sine wave, it's much more difficult, but you can still gain nice results. And for this sound in particular, I used PHA, and I delayed a little bit the sample, and then I moved the phase just a tiny bit, and everything is in mono, so I'm just working on one single channel, and I aligned it with the kick drum. Then we have this mid bass. Very nice groovy sound coming from Gai. Here the cool things are that I added this resonator plugin and distortion and saturation. This saturation plugin is very nice. It's free, kind of simulating analog saturation. Very cool. These three plugins together gave the sound a bit more character. Then simple delay, reverb. Once again, EQ, making space for the stub, of which we will talk later, removing the unnecessary side informations here below 200 Hz, and removing a bit of those clicky sounds from 3000 above. Compression. Once again, SSL EQ, this time in stereo mode, adding presence around 3K and around 5K. Let's hear width. And and without, but in context you will hear much more together with the drums and the other bass. As you can hear, this brings the sound much more up front. E major, just to removing even more side information below 200 Hz. And in this case, I used transient shaper to make this sound fit a little bit more the groove of the track. I used transient shaper mainly because I was working with audio and it was a bit difficult to reshape the envelopes from here, from the clip view in Ableton. So I chose to use transient shaper, and then a simple sidechain compression from the clap. Then we have this very cool drony spacey stub. With this filter opening and closing throughout the arrangement. Let's hear together with the rest of the sounds. Decapitator to give it a bit more present. Fab filter, removing the low end. Compression. Again, SSL EQ, a bit more R. And as this stub is out of the basis group, I put another sidechain from the kick here, and in this case it's also a bit more prominent and it's sidechaining much more compared to the bass channel, because I wanted this sound to be in the background compared to the other basses. And again, sidechain from the clap. Then we have the lead. This one came out as an homage to that trancey atmosphere that both me and Guy loved. So it's a super soul synth, quite classic sound coming from Diva. Let's hear it. With many automations here throughout the track and arrangement. Basically just opening and closing the filter and the release to fit the various parts of the arrangement. Here it's closing a little bit because it's going to the breakdown, so less energetic part. Supermassive here acting as a reverb. EQ, once again, removing the low end, removing a little bit of this boominess and boxiness around 500 Hz. Compression, SSL EQ, adding presence and air, mostly air around 3K and half and 5K. And soot, removing those harsh frequencies that nobody likes. Quite harsh. In the breakdown, I wanted to have the same melody, but with a different sound to make the whole composition less boring. So I chose this one, very sweet key sound. Really good from the Jupiter simulation of Arturia, run it through distortion pedal, another different distortion from Ableton, crystallizer for weird delays, another delay, reverb, and just EQ a compression basically. Then we have these massive chords. The main idea of the whole track came from these chords together with the groove, and then from here everything else started. Energetic and groovy, really nice sound from Massive. Basically, it's just making a power chord, 2 notes, the first and the fifth 1 octave below here, as you can see. We used Saturn once again, same concept, just adding add and presence, delay, reverb, EQ, compression. In this case, the compression is quite hard because the filter is closing and opening a lot. So we didn't want too much volume difference between the parts in which the filter is open compared to the part in which the filter is closed. SSL EQ stereo once again, smack attack to make the sound a bit tighter, removing a bit of sustain. I used this technique because the decay and release envelopes into this massive sound were linked to the filter, and I didn't want to change the filter feel, so I preferred to use smack attack as a transient shaper, basically, just removing a bit of sustain without interfering with the filters. And then once again, E major to remove a bit of the stereo informations below 200 Hz. Suit, track spacer to make room for the lead when they are both sounding together. Atmospheric sounds. This is just for transitions, basically. And this one is another of the main sounds. In the breakdown is acting as a space alien ship sound. And then in this section here, because of its automations, it's like a riser, basically, rising up the energy for this section and for the drop. Let's hear it in solo. Going up, 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 and then silence, and then here, same note, but 1 octave below, as you can see in the drop, 1 octave below. So it does like this. Very nice. Then we have the pads. This sound is very cool. I use often in my tracks from Hive. Basically, we just have filter automations opening and closing throughout the track. Nothing really fancy, just very closed at the beginning, then opening here for the first drop. Quite opened in the background to give that dreamy, spacey feel. Simple atmospheric sound. One last thing I would like to mention is that for my effects, I love to record various experiments from the sounds of the track. For example, for this shifted perk I called, or here, very nice sounds actually coming from these congas, and from various experiments automating these knobs and then recorded in another audio channel and use them as effects. Did basically the same thing also for this reverse lead sound. That is basically just introducing the lead. Same thing for this reverse pad. And once again for the chords. And here I also recorded that nice Hive sound. And just use them as effects in my track, just to glue everything together and to make the overall atmosphere the same idea. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you liked it, please consider subscribing to my channel. I will make many others and probably also improve making them. And I also just opened my new Patreon, and in which you will find this project free to download, as well as samples and also many other things that may sound interesting to you. So if you'd like to support me and my work, please consider subscribing. And many thanks for your attention. Till the next time.